PM on my computer. I'll call the meeting to order. Council, we have a full agenda. I note Councillor Bell is zooming in from exotic locations on Vancouver Island. And any concerns, conflicts, amendments to the agenda? Remember to look at Councillor Bell as well. Hearing and seeing none, motion to adopt, please. Seconded, all in favor? Motion carries. Then it is my pleasure to proclaim April 28th, 2023 as the day of mourning for workers killed and injured on the job. My thanks to the Canadian Labour Congress and the local chapter for all that they're doing. There will be events, I believe, up and down the coast on April 28th at 11 o'clock. So some of the council, I believe, will be able to participate in that. Council, we move to our minutes of the regular meeting of April 12th, pages 4 to 6. Any concerns, comments, amendments? Not, motion to adopt. Seconded. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And then, oops. The committee of the whole meeting, pages 7 to 9 for receipt, but first turn it over to our corporate officer.
Thank you, Worship. There are a couple of typographical errors that we would like to amend and correct prior to adoption with council's endorsement. They are on page 8 of our agenda package tonight. The second bullet is the word requirements is repeated twice. And there is a word missing from the third bullet on the 9th page. Residents also be provided with as many as 3 meals a day. The word with is missing from that sentence. I would propose those amendments prior to adoption.
Great, thank you. Did you mention the third bullet on page 8? Word into, I think, should be in.
My apologies. It is now noted.
Very good. With those amendments, council, any other corrections or? Thank you. Seconded. Any further discussion? Councillor McLaughlin.
Yes, I was just wondering under item 5.2, page 8, the support option for unhoused community members. I think that was relating also to the safety task force as an item. Thought it sort of following from that. And I did mention that we did only in terms of reference to that topic. I would include some of the research taking place.
Thanks. I think, so in terms of, or is this, are you proposing an amendment to these minutes or are you just making an observation? And looking forward to
well, it was mentioned, and I think it's critical for the business of the district.
The presentation was done purely as a report on our field trip as to what some other communities are doing for their unhoused population. I know that terms of reference and recommendations for committee membership will be coming to council. So as far as for terms of reference, that was not my intention with this. It was strictly for information. I'm sure this topic will come up at the safety committee. But I'm not prepared to make a recommendation as such.
amendment.
An amendment, yeah.
Okay, I think Councilor McLaughlin, we can be assured that the terms of reference of the committee will come. Certainly take that into consideration.
Well, we will make reference to
Yeah.
these two items together
We,
at that.
I'm not hearing, the minutes are not meant to be, the verbatim transcript,
No.
so. But yes, your statement about the need for terms of reference to the Community Safety Committee.
I was just thinking as per trips that we take on taxpayers' dollars, I presume.
No. I
No,
don't
you
think
did
that's-
it on
no.
your own?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that helps with clarification. I just wanted there to be a line of accountability if it was. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I should have been clear. That field trip that Counselor Toss and I took was on our own dime. As they say, even,
That's a bit more than a dime.
well, it was McDonald's.
All right. Thanks, okay. All question, all in favor of adoption as amended? Carried. Council, we go to item 7.1, the Growing Community Fund Reserve Bylaw, and this is before us for adoption. Council, you remember we discussed this a couple of weeks ago. So I think we can entertain a motion to adopt. I think we just go straight to adoption. Motion seconded. Any further discussion? You, Counselor Bell. Okay. All in favor? Great. And the street patio application fee, the same thing on page 15. Process, unless there's any concerns on the motion to adopt. Seconded. Discussion.
Yeah, these two items, this one's fairly straightforward. The bylaw that was previously mentioned that was voted on by council. I hope that with the adoption of that particular bylaw, that it's clear to the public what that is. In terms of the amount that's there. And because we went to adoption and today there's more people than usual and we have adopted bylaw with quite a large substantive amount of money that's going into the bylaw, so.
Oh, for the,
yeah.
You're referring to the Growing Community Fund?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the $50 is pretty straightforward. It's not a lot of money. It's pretty clear within the information presented what it's for. Previous one item though is a bylaw we're creating for almost $4 million.
The holds, yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you for the clarification. Emphasis perhaps.
Yes.
All right, council. So item 7.2, we have a motion to adopt the bylaw number 575-12, 2023. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, then we go to the 9.1, the Community Investment Program grants. We have staff's report, and I believe Ms. Smith is with us to answer questions as we go through this. Maybe Councillor Bell, would you like to say a couple of things first?
Yes, please. Thank you. First of all, I want to give a sincere thank you to Siobhan for her leadership to this program. It is absolutely, she's been a tremendous help for me, and she is very committed to this. I also want to thank Julie for your administrative help and keeping us accurate and on track. And finally to the members of the committee, Vicky, Lee, Sandy, and Jacqueline. My heartfelt thank you to you, each one of you. During the process, I know how much work you put into this. It was evident in the information that you had, the questions you asked, and I want to thank you sincerely for your time for this initiative.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Bell. Now we get to turn it over to Ms. Smith. You turn on your microphone and see if the blue light.
Yes,
All right.
we're good.
So you've got a presentation.
I do. It'll be brief, I promise. All right. So what we're discussing tonight is our community investment program. In many municipalities, this would be referred to as the Grant in Aid program. Where am I pointing you? That one. Might help if I turn it on. Oh, it is on.
Next slide.
No?
It is brief.
Yeah, well, we can do it without the slides too.
Oh.
It might just be the. There we go. All right, I'll try that again. We have this program because our municipality recognizes the essential role that nonprofits and charities play in our community. So each year in our operating budget, we set aside funds for these grants, and this is our opportunity to invest in the community and into the organizations that are able to extend the reach of our own programs and services. Of course, no municipality would be able to provide all the services that its residents has come to need and expect. And so this is how we do that, is by investing a small portion of money into the community organizations that can help to do that for us. We might not be their biggest contributor, but it is vital for these organizations to receive municipal support, because it's the municipal support that they're able to use to leverage to go after provincial and federal funding, as well as grants from foundations and private sponsorships. We know that for every $1 in community investment program grants that we give out, these organizations are able to bring in an additional $9.50 from other sources. So who we're giving these grants to are our local registered nonprofit and charity organizations that are offering services, programs, and events that directly benefit the citizens of Sechelt. Groups can apply for an annual project grant, or they can apply for a multi-year operating grant. And every year they are asked to fill in a final report, and that has to be reviewed by both staff and the committee before we consider giving them funding again for another year. So our grant review committee is chaired by Councillor Bell, along with 4 other community volunteers who all have expertise in grants and nonprofits. This image here is of one of our former committee members offering a free grant writing workshop to the community. So these committee members have many years of either working for nonprofit organizations, working for granting organizations. They definitely come with years of experience and knowledge. The review committee is also tasked with making policy recommendations to council, and next month the committee will meet again to have an opportunity to discuss any policy recommendations and updates that they might recommend to council for consideration. So when we're assessing these applications, staff review all of the applications first, and then they are turned over to the committee for actual evaluation. The evaluation criteria is established in the council policy itself, and you'll see that also reflected in the scorecard that's attached at the end of my report. So they're taking into consideration things like community need, what the benefit to the residents of Sechelt will be, and evidence of receiving funding from other sources, that these programs are actually going to be viable and sustainable. So new to our program this year was an online application process, which has been amazing. And it was made possible thanks to our brand new website. So this has really streamlined our process for both the applicants and those of us on the other end going through all of the applications. So each year we typically receive anywhere between 20 to 25 applications. And this year we received 23 for a total request of $165,000 in grants. The median ask was $5,000, but you'll note that the median recommended grant is just $2,000. And so before you tonight is a report containing all the recommendations of the CIP Grant Committee. You'll see that not all applicants are being recommended for an award. So although the groups may have met the basic eligibility criteria, in situations like this, it means that they did not successfully meet all of the criteria that was outlined in the policy for actually being a good fit for our program. And you'll see this reflected in the score sheet. So I am more than happy to answer any questions you may have, but that concludes the presentation.
Very good, thank you. Council, so yes, let's entertain questions first and then we'll turn to the procedural matters of motions. Who would like to start? Okay, you want to explain, please? We've got some recommendations for funding that is or I guess commitments to fund over the next 3 years.
Yes.
Can you say more about those?
Sure. So some of our applicants are looking for more sustained funding to put towards their operating. So it's not simply a one-time project or event. It's often going more towards the costs of actually running their programs, providing staffing, and having the opportunity to receive a commitment of 2 or 3 years at a time provides them with some assurance that they will be able to run this program or service. Maybe they need to hire on a new person. And it's not too long of a time that they're not able to really project, how this program is going to go. So it's giving them a little bit of support in terms of sustainability, but it's not forcing them to have to project too far into the future to know, where the program is really going to be at 5 or 6 years from now. So we've been doing them 3-year increments. And we found that seems to be working for our organization as well as the organizations that we're supporting. Now, it's up to the applicants to decide if they want to apply for a 1-year project grant or for multi-year funding. And when the committee adjudicates, they may choose to award an organization a grant just for 1 year, even if the organization was requesting multi-year funding.
Are there any criteria? Could the new applicant apply for?
No, first of all, they have to be an organization that has been registered for at least 3 years, and they have to have already received 2 consecutive years of grants from us so that we have that track record to know that they're an organization that we want to work with.
Councillor Inkster.
Thank you. Just through you to Siobhan, could I see the chart?
Yes, that's
up there.
Could
Okay.
we share that chart again? Do you have that handy or? Carry on with your comment.
Well, I just wanted
Page
to,
22 of your agenda.
yeah, I'm just waiting for it's up there just for the public to see as well, because it's important information. Hopefully that's what people will be saying to us. Yes.
There you go.
And again.
Use Councillor Inkster. What
Just the note of the skating club with in the end, they didn't qualify for large amounts, and I'm usually very happy with the work and that the committee puts in, and our council representative. Some of the groups that apply, it's just interesting when they don't get the funding that they're looking for. It's skating club as an example, and the SPVA with the other event.
Yes.
So, yeah.
No, that's good. So that's what the committee give a question you want to ask about.
Just of note of those particular noting the skating club, it's just they have one of the local organizations that serve you. So it's noted.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Yes, thank you for the chair. I was just a little curious. I didn't go through the detailed application, I guess, which was also online, but the safety program for Sunshine Coast Community Services, they requested 10,000. Last year got 2, and we gave them 2 again. I was just looking at the detail of that too. It's it's defined a little differently in the report. I'm getting the glasses. But it's called the Society for Their Safe Neighborhoods Project. So I'm just wondering what that one's about a bit in terms of, is it to do with safety for the downtown, or I don't know what they define as their neighborhood.
Okay, through the chair. So it is directly around their building. So this is Sunshine Coast Community Services. And what they have been finding in the last couple of years is that they are facing a major increase in security and safety concerns. They are finding that the clients that they are serving are not always feeling comfortable accessing their services and programs. Like they physically don't feel comfortable in that area. A number of organizations in that neighborhood have started paying for security guard services. So it's security guards that are monitoring the area. Community Services has sort of stepped up as one of the main organizations that's really trying to tackle this problem and to do it in a respectful way where they are ensuring that the security guards that they are hiring are not simply moving people along, but actually engaging with people and trying to see whether or not they can help to find them the services that they need. At this time, they are primarily funding this out of their own operating budget because it's a new expense for them that they had not been budgeting for in the past. And so they have come to the District of Sechelt, and the committee felt that they wanted to recognize that this is a broader community concern and it's essential for community services, but it was not something that we would be able to have the resources to fund to the level that they were looking for.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bell, I don't want to ignore you if you've got anything to add or any questions for that matter, although you know the content of this subject in rather great detail, I'm sure.
Yes, well, it certainly, there was a lot of time put into this. We took every line and spoke about it in great detail. So certainly there is, but what I want to say is that, some of the asks, we understand the asks were large and that we could not meet some of the, certainly some of the asks, but it does not at all negate how much we appreciate and respect and value each one of these, nonprofit organizations. It's just simply, there's just, not enough money to go around. So I just wanted to highlight that, as I say, we recognize how important these organizations are to our community.
Great, thank you. Councillor Inkster.
Thanks. Just also wanted to ask through you, perhaps to Siobhan and or finance. I've asked this question previously and we've done it differently previously based on that line of questioning. The outreach program and the safety program, sort of justice program, does that come from traffic fund? And if it doesn't, why not?
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say not directly, but indirectly, right? The revenue from traffic fines shows as a revenue item, and we utilize that to go against the policing costs and, any other costs within the budget for leasing or these grants.
Good follow up.
So we basically spend the traffic fine budget every year without designations or?
Well,
Programs,
there's
program.
allotted allowances that you can spend the traffic fine money on.
Yeah.
And we spend it on those items, yes. Of which this is part. This can be part, yes.
Okay.
Like
so-
we don't earmark every penny for this or this or this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But so it doesn't go towards paying finance staff, but shows up in our and goes to help cover some of those costs as
Yeah.
well as others that we would want to attribute to the traffic plan revenue.
Okay, so asking through you, just continuing. That, so if a program and or needed issue arises in 6 months, we're talking about a number of things that include one particular item includes yourself and Councillor Rowe. With some issues in the downtown core. Could we not, is the traffic fine fund drawn down and or disappeared to the point where we couldn't draw from that to help with those programs? And if in fact the answer is it's gone, that I'm disappointed. Because I think we need to be able to reach into funds like that in order to cover any kind of extra spending we may need to help with some of our downtown issues. So it's not I'm disappointed. It's not a route I would take. Obviously, it's what's happened. It's what's policy, but it's
Well, I
disappointing.
think though, when the time comes for the community safety to report, we are fortunate at least this year that we've got a number of sources of funds, so you know, a good year for that to have some flexibility. But perhaps for next year, we can look at identifying where the money comes from a little more. But can something that occurred to me, I wondered, what is our procedure? Do letters go out congratulating people for those who maybe didn't get what they asked for or didn't get anything? What do we do? We send them thanks, sorry, or do we give them some reasons?
Yes, thank you. So each applicant will receive a letter and thanking them for their application and also explaining why they did or did not receive a grant. So we do ensure that the committee has some comments on each organization's application. It's just as valuable for those that did receive a grant to understand why it is that we are supporting their organization. They all do receive feedback. They're also always welcome to speak with me directly if they have any additional questions. And then there is opportunity for mayor and council to have present the check to the organization and have a photograph taken for communication purposes with the local media.
Obviously, we saw your presentation with all sorts of people. Okay, we've got some recommended motions from staff. Just one point that occurred to me, is it right? I guess the first one is correct at 103,000 because the previous commitments would already be approved previously. Look on the screen. We've got 103, but we've got 19 that were committed previously. Do you want a motion for 103 or a motion for 122?
Yes, please. For 103, the 4 that were previously committed to were committed to in prior years. And so we currently have a written agreement with them. So those ones are already done. So just the ones that are listed here,
Okay,
please. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Anything else, Council? Councilor McLaughlin, please.
Yes, thank you through the chair. I mean, of course, we would like to support all these organizations. And I noticed in the criteria, that wasn't something that is unfortunately an issue in this community, which is water issues and fire issues. So I'm a little concerned about having some of our best activities with our biggest crowds in August when we could well be on severe water restrictions. And we're all on tenterhooks about fires in every lot and seashell.
So, Councilor
So,
McLaughlin, how does that relate to the applications?
Well, for instance, unfortunately, I think even the Deer Crossing Art Farm application where they have camping, et cetera, and 500 people perhaps at a time, to me represents a bit of a risk, which normally I wouldn't be too concerned about, but I am concerned about given my fears for the summer. And also even, I hate to say it, but even for the Festival of the Written Arts. I mean, we get so many people at that time of year, regardless of the water situation. I don't know if we have any policies that will come into play then or emergency procedures, and also if they have to cancel these activities, what does that mean with our money? Do we ask for some of it back if it doesn't actually happen? Well, those are just some questions and concerns I have. Thank you.
Thank you. I share your concerns. I think in this case, I prefer we be optimistic that for these individual events, things will work. The dollar amounts are not that large, so as I say, I do share your concerns about the impact of shortages of water, but I'm certainly supportive of the motions, which I have yet to get. I ask for a motion.
Thank you. I'd like to move the recommendations on page 18 and 19 as presented in the agenda.
So that's all the way 1 to 3.8. Thank you. Second, any further discussion? Oh, and we can stop the screen share. Thank you. All right, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, and thank you to the committee and Ms. Smith. Ongoing toiling around this, and
Thank you.
look forward to all those pictures.
Thank you.
Councillor Bell will be in all of them.
No, please. Thank you again, Siobhan.
Council, we can move on then to item 9.2. Temporary use permit for 5750 Anchor Road. To say a preamble of fascinating artist rendering. Mr. Kobowitz.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just have a brief introduction to the file in front of you, no presentation, but this is a temporary use permit for your consideration for 5750 Anchor Road. An applicant has requested a temporary use permit in order to install a temporary show home on the property. It's a property that's zoned RM1, residential multiple 1, and there's a potential application forthcoming for a development permit for a 4-unit building consistent with the zoning on the property. And this proposal would allow the applicant to test the market for these particular manufactured modular units that would consist of the building eventually. So we've proposed that an allowance for a 1-year location on the property to be installed within the next 6 months would be permitted. Some of the conditions in the permit include that the operation of the show home or the showing of the show home only be permitted between noon and 5 p.m. That a $25,000 security deposit be provided to the district to ensure removal of the unit after 1 year. And as I noted, a development permit for form of character would be forthcoming to council in the near future. If you have any questions, happy to answer them. And the applicant is also in the gallery if you have any questions for them. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Kobowitz. Mr. Councillor Inkster.
Could be the applicants here. I just have one question of the show home or it's being placed there. Will there be any kind of landscaping attached to the show home as it sits there?
At this point, the show home proposal doesn't propose any significant landscaping, although the applicant can answer this question further. We would expect some minor landscaping to take place to dress it up, but we've not required extensive landscaping for this period.
Council, anything else? Interesting site.
Yes, through the chair. I'm a little, I'm just wondering, what is the context around this? Isn't there another TUP on a lot beside it? Also, are there any sensitive ecosystems around it? And are there trees that will be taken out as well?
Thank you for the question. There are no trees proposed for removal on this site. It's consists of a bedrock cliff that's an exposed cliff, and so or bedrock slope. And so part of this proposal with these modular units is that they can be placed in an elevated position above the bedrock, not requiring extensive land alterations. One of the challenging points of this property. So there's an alternative proposal in that regard. The other property that you're referring to is further towards the lighthouse complex, which was the Harbor Air temporary use permit that was considered earlier in the year for a temporary parking lot, not related to there would be with the development permit conditions, there may be further environmental assessment that would be done, but there's no identified impacts on the property. There's no further lot clearing or anything like that that would occur on the property.
Just to follow up on that, the chair, so you're saying the unit, the show home would be removed for sure, or is it possible that the developer will come and want to just build 2 or 3 more units on it?
Anything? I'll answer that, but at the moment, we've heard there'll be a bond to remove it. So if we should change our position on an application.
Well, I don't really know if people really need to see this as a show home. There's so much they do with 3D drawing, et cetera, as you can see from the illustration here. So I would not really be supportive of this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Bell, thank you for waiting.
Yes. Oops, where'd I go?
We're here.
Oh, there we go. There we are. In looking at page, oh dear, what is it? I can't see it here. It's at page 39, I believe. Looking at under the official community plan, I'm happy, or I will support this project or this modular show home, because I'm seeing that the temporary use does not negatively affect existing business or surrounding properties in terms of noise, lighting, parking, traffic, or other aspects. So that has been considered, as well as it does support our new zoning bylaw in terms of its modular nature. So I will support this motion.
Thank you. Reminding me, yes, I can get a motion. Bishop Council. Councilor Rowe.
I'll move recommendation 1A that council approved temporary use permit 2023-28 for a period of 1 year commencing after installation of the temporary show home, subject to A, the temporary show home must be installed within 6 months or the permit shall be canceled, and B, that a $25,000 security deposit be provided prior to installation to ensure the removal of the show home.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? I see a seconder. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Councilor McLaughlin is opposed. The motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Kobowitz. Are you staying with us? My computer just said it's time to restart. It won't. Yes, you are staying, aren't you?
I am, thank you. I'll just briefly speak to this. This is another temporary use permit for the Rogue Arts Festival. And it's a permit that's been ongoing and held starting in 2016. They had a temporary use permit previously that was renewed once for a total of 6 years, which is recently expired. So for the festival to be held for this coming year, a new temporary use permit will have to be considered and issued by council. And there will also be an application considered by the Agricultural Land Commission to also allow the festival to take place at Clark Farms on Tyson Road. And it is located within the Agricultural Land Reserve. And like I say, the festival has been continuously held. There was a short break for 2 years during COVID where there was a different format on the property, but they're looking forward to reestablishing that going forward. So I'm happy to answer any questions if you like. And also the representatives are in the gallery as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Hey, council, maybe can perhaps I'll jump in. And so they've had a TUP that's been renewed once, a three-year TUP that was renewed once. So now they're able to come back and apply again. Counselor. Oh,
I don't have any questions. I think the Rogue Arts Festival is a good community experience. So I'm happy to move the recommendations on page 48 as presented.
great, thank you. Is there a seconder? Any further discussion? Counselor McLaughlin?
Yes, through the chair. I do appreciate the kind of cultural activity they provide and the fun and et cetera. But I know we used to have more of a children's festival in Sechelt downtown, and we don't have that anymore. So I would actually prefer to see something like that back at Hackett Park and more family oriented for children, so something to consider maybe moving forward for them. Thank you.
Okay. By the way, somebody online has asked that council speak up. So apparently the feed into YouTube is good. Or Zoom, actually, since. Okay, council, we've got a motion in front of us. Any other discussion on this? All in favor? Sorry, wait, I better just check. I think I know what Councillor Bell is. Thank you. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Kowitz. I don't think you're staying for the next one. And thank you to the Rogue Earth Society. Okay, so we get to move to item 9.4. And a challenge, Mr. Dillon, I guess, are you going to speak or is Mayor's?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just briefly introduce staff who will be presenting on the
Okay.
Wakefield lift station. So I have Julie Mares, Engineering Project Manager, Christine Miller, Manager of Wastewater, and Megan Lee, Manager of Sustainable Infrastructure to co-present about Wakefield lift station.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay.
Slides.
Our apologies, Your Worship, we're having some technical difficulty with the slide
Thank you.
sharing. It'll just be a moment.
We should go to council reports. Okay. You guys want to start or?
Council. The district's sanitary sewer system is a network of collection and conveyance pipes, gravity and force main. The force mains are pressurized pipes driven by 8 lift stations pushing wastewater uphill, where it is able to flow down by gravity to the WRC for treatment. The main components of a sewer lift station are the wet well, which is the tank where the wastewater flows into, the pumps, controls and valves, and the backup generator. Beyond that, there are also odor control features, alarms, monitoring and communication systems, and a building to protect that infrastructure and electronics from the environment. The area that makes up the Wakefield sewer catchment serves approximately 2,500 people and is the largest sewer catchment area in the district. This is expected to almost triple over the next 30+ years at full build out. The Wakefield lift station faces some unique challenges. Being located so close to the ocean, it experiences saltwater corrosion, storm impacts, and is subject to sea level rise. Additionally, the location and available land limits the space and ability for construction.
The Wakefield lift station was constructed in 1995. This lift station has undergone extensive progressive restoration over the last 5 years to replace failing housing, instrumentation, and electrical components. In 2020, the structural integrity of the electrical kiosk was reinforced to ensure it could withstand the impact of logs and debris during high tide storms. The components have reached end of life. At the Wakefield lift station, there's one. There. At the Wakefield lift station, the equipment's lifespan cannot be extended any further through maintenance efforts. We are currently in a precarious situation, relying on borrowed time until a replacement is built. Beyond equipment replacement, the existing wet well is undersized for the current demand. Operationally, there is only a 20-minute window from a failure at the lift station to a wastewater overflow to the ocean. There are significant costs associated with emergency callouts at this location. Our compliance with the municipal wastewater regulation requires us to ensure both protection of the environment and the safe conveyance of wastewater to the Water Resource Center for treatment.
You released a RFP in December of 2022 for the design build of the sanitary lift station. We received one proposal in February 24th from Drake Excavating in the value of 3.695. District staff led collaborative efforts with Drake and the owner's rep to further optimize the design, scope of work, and to enhance the project's value and reduce the construction costs. We reduced the value to 3.262,100. We have approximate savings of over 400,000. The cost optimized proposal meets the intent and design criteria set out by the request for proposals and presents increased value to the district. Drake Excavating is a family-owned and operated business located in Maple Ridge. Darren Dreher, the founder, and his team bring a wealth of knowledge and experience and decades long of knowledge in this industry. Drake has diverse portfolio in municipal infrastructure projects and has worked on several other municipal projects in Whistler and the Fraser Valley. The financial analysis for funding, currently, we have $1.2 million. The total project budget required, including the owner's representative, archaeology, surveying, engineering, construction, and monitoring, is $4,048,990. Our total additional funding required to complete this project is $2,884,990. Financial analysis for the funding cap proposed includes using a grant, sewer development cost charges, sewer capital reserve, and the growing community fund. We've also put in there an option to use short-term borrowing from Municipal Finance Authority for the 1.1 instead of using the growing community fund. If the budget is approved and Drake is awarded the project, we will start right away and issue the contract and have a kickoff meeting on April 24th and 25th. Design will follow shortly after and will start from April to August 2023. We will then enter the construction phase with a bit of overlap from July to October. And finally, we'll have the final closeout and hopefully to be completed by fall, winter of 2023. Again, the above are milestones, and as we go through the project, we will work to pinpoint these more closer. I was just going to quickly go back to a couple of the slides that we missed because Megan did a great little chart of the.
Very good.
There we go.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, it's actually supposed to, there we go, it actually moves. No. Oh, yeah, it's animated. Yeah. Great. And then this was kind of showing the catchment area.
Just for Councillor Bell too, and others on the.
Thank you. That's the sewer catchment for the Wakefield, existing and future.
Thank you.
Sorry, through the chair, can you tell us what the colors are, future and because I can't tell.
Right.
Thank you for the question. Sorry, I don't have the legend here, but they'll be defined by pressure zones, gravity zones,
You know what?
future.
Yes, sorry, it's hidden by the
Yeah.
picture. If we could move the council chamber picture, just slide that across. There.
Thank you. Yeah, so the purple area right now currently flows to the existing Wakefield lift station wet well. and that segment is pumped up to the force main. The blue section is future additional area that would flow to the Wakefield lift station. The red zone flows to the force main directly, but then is pumped by the pumping head of the Wakefield lift station. So the pumps are still responsible to push that, even though it doesn't flow to the lift station directly. And there's future direct to the force main. And then additionally, there is a Norwest Bay lift station that collects an amount indicated there in orange, and the future Norwest Bay is in yellow. And that ends up being pumped again into the force main that's driven by the Wakefield pumps. So that's what those colors mean.
Interesting. Thank you for this. That's. Councilor Inkster.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a couple questions about the information that's presented. Just a finance question, if I could, or you can come
Certainly.
back. You can come back to me with a finance question if you want.
Just to be clear, so
Right.
you've finished your formal presentation? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so you can come back to me with finance if you want. I wanted to ask you, the information you presented on the previous slide had 2,500 people. I just wanted some clarification. Does that mean 2,500 toilets? Does that mean 2,500 people? Or does that mean 2,500 houses? And if in fact, whichever figure you mentioned to me here, when you mentioned the 3 times capacity increase, is that a 3-time capacity of 7,500 people, 7,500 toilets, or 7,500 houses? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Excellent question again. So 2,500 people is the population equivalent. So each housing unit, when you're calculating sewer capacity, is expected to have 2.5 occupants using that system. So regardless of the amount of toilets, that's approximately how much wastewater is produced per unit. When you're looking at something like a school, for example, West Sechelt Elementary, there's equivalent units that you use to calculate how much wastewater is expected to come from that. So we use the number of sewer connections and then made a separate calculation for population equivalent for institutional use, for example, for the elementary school.
Okay, so it's roughly 2,500 people.
That's correct. There's no way to know exactly how many people live in each home. But over a broad area, that's typically what's seen. And that is the standard for sewer
And
calculation.
with that rule of thumb, that equates to about 1,000.
Yes.
Yes.
So it's 1,000 units then, which is the projection is 3,000 units, 3,000 homes is the projection capacity that we're projecting for that particular unit. Yeah.
For the
And
total catchment.
total catchment area, the capacity. Okay, does that then mean that we hit capacity at that 3,000 units then when we hit that?
You mean, is the lift station able to handle that
Yeah,
volume?
yeah, and above, I'm wondering.
So looking at the total catchment and looking at the total development potential of that area over the next 30 years.
Yeah.
We've defined that around 7,000 or so population equivalent.
Yeah.
So there's no further development expected to be able to fit in that area based on our current zoning.
Yeah.
And so the new lift station will be designed to accommodate that entire build out.
Okay,
Right, I think that's the substantive question, that what we're being asked to proceed with
Yeah.
will handle the expected growth for 30 years.
okay, thank you through you to staff, thanking them for that question being answered. My question continuing though is that, and I think we need to talk about this, we have approved more recently a number of more dense developments in that area. I'm not sure if it always has met the community plan, but it's in reaction to the need to provide more affordable and varied sizes of housing. So is that 3,000 units going to be reflective of where we're going in 3 years?
3 years or 30 years?
I would say 3. I think that we are going to, over the next little while, with a review of our OCP, et cetera, going to be looking at density, higher density.
Right.
I'm just predicting that because of the
Okay.
housing needs.
Right. But in the context of what we've got in front of us, I'm comforted by we've got the capability to serve 3 times the current population. wherever it's built and whatever density. So, you know, as opposed to, hey, it's big enough for today, but we're gonna need a new one tomorrow, which I not like.
Well, I just think
How
we're gonna
about-
have to revise those figures, but that'll be a conversation that we'll end
And
up
if we
having.
do, I
Yeah.
mean, then we get into interesting discussions
Yeah.
of new types of wastewater treatment and localized treatment. And,
Yeah.
Just I want to move to Councillor Bell, who's
Yeah.
had her hand up.
Oops. Oh. Yeah, thank you. It's through the chair, and I have a budget question just in terms of, certainly in terms of when we started putting this budget together, I know, and where we are today. As I read this, and I just need further clarification on this, is that we're looking at at this point, a total of approximately $4 million for this particular project. Which is an additional, I think, up $2 million when we originally started. Just need clarification in the numbers. And the reason that I'm asking is more, where is I know that everything is going up. There's considerable cost escalation in this. Is it product? I know it's a number of things, but I just would like a bit of a highlight on that, because I think it's really important for members of our community to understand just why these costs are going up so significantly in terms of what's happening within our economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to grab that one?
Thank you for the question through the mayor. If I haven't answered all your questions, just to remind me of what they are. The first one being, yes, we're asking for additional $2.8 million. Yes, we're seeing the prices increase dramatically on projects such as this. We had an example of in Nanaimo where a project similar to this went up 50% in the last 8 months. So we are seeing the prices of pumps and generators and all the components of this lift station go up dramatically. So this pricing reflects all of that at the current market and a current tender. Answer them all, Donna?
Thank you very much.
Yes.
That's correct. Thanks.
Thank you.
A reminder, Councillor Bell, to lower your hand, please. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Couple of questions, and I apologize for not getting this to staff ahead of time, but the DCC bylaws specifies the amount of money that we can spend on this particular project within the bylaw, which was something that was sort of confirmed for us during the budget process. So I'm trying to figure out how we reconcile spending in excess of that bylaw amount for this project. Thank you.
Douglas, if that turns on for you.
Thank you for the question. So we haven't approved a bylaw yet for 2023. This project's listed in there at 1.2 million about. And so we're waiting to finalize the capital plan based on these numbers. Am I off? So we're waiting to finalize the capital plan based on tonight's motions. You know, when we present budgets, we present the best number that we have at the time. We've applied for a grant and we received grant money. You know, the inflation of project costs have been, I would say, unprecedented over the last 2 years. And so that's kind of why we find ourselves here.
Councillor Toth.
Thank you. No, I'm just seeking clarity specifically around the DCC portion, because one of the reasons for needing to update our DCC bylaw was knowing that our cost estimation was so inaccurate because of the age of the bylaw, let's say. And I know, like, I've got the bylaw open here and it says 222,700, right? Yeah, $222,750 in DCCs towards the Wakefield lift station. So do we need to amend our DCC bylaw in order to actually exceed the amount that we've listed in our bylaw?
Great question, Councillor Toth. I'm sorry I missed it the first time around. We received a legal opinion on the amount of money that we can utilize from the DCC reserve. And the response was that as long as we stay at 50% or under of the total project cost, we were allowed to elevate the amount that we use from the DCC funds.
Okay, well, yep, okay. Yep, you're up.
Thank you. And I guess for my other question, looking on page 90 of the agenda package, option 2 is council rejecting the above recommendations and directing staff to pursue alternatives for the Wakefield sanitary lift station. So I'm just going to flat out say it, with the cost escalation and the single bid, I'm not comfortable with proceeding with this project as it is at this time. I'm interested to hear what alternatives might include. But I would be interested in us trying to retender the project personally, but I would be interested in hearing about option 2.
Okay. Option 2 is a bit of a catch-all, but does council have, I mean, we must replace, repair, fix the lift station function there. So that's a given. So, Mr. Douglas.
I can just make a couple of comments here. This was put out to tender. It was a open process for people to bid on, for contractors to engage with the community or us on this project. It was open for some time. It wasn't a short tender of any sort. And we received one bid.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the other side of what you're saying. I feel frustrated, but we've seen it in the next topic on our agenda. We've seen it with other proposals or other projects locally and on the Sunshine Coast coming in high. And I fear if we were to go back for alternatives, we could end up with an even higher bid. So I don't like the numbers, and I've got some comments about how I'd like to see us pay for it, but I feel we got to go with this. Subject to me, you all agreeing with what I want to do with Councillor Inkster, please.
Speaking to the suggestion made by a council member, the information that was presented to us by staff indicates a lift station that's at the end of life. It indicates pictures of a lift station at the end of life. We've seen the rust and the issues. The report speaks to a sort of a field trip that we had done there where staff had explained to us sewage coming out of the system itself into the ocean, which is an environmental nightmare and issue.
You're get on with it.
Pardon?
You're in the get on with it. Side of this discussion.
Yeah. Well, my point is we need to replace it.
Yeah.
And I don't think that prices will come in any cheaper.
Okay.
And we need to move forward with this.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Bell's been patient with her hand up, so we'll go to you and then Councillor McLaughlin. Muted, Councillor Bell.
I just muted myself. Thank you. Through the chair. There's no question. First of all, I want to acknowledge Councillor Toth's comment, and I certainly support his concern as well. I mean, this is a tremendous amount of money. I think what we're seeing, and we've all just spoken about that the way that costs are escalating so quickly, I don't think we can afford to wait. Plus, this is a critical infrastructure piece for us in terms of our ecosystem and environment. So I would like to put a motion for it that I will support the recommendations that are given in recommendations 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bell. I wonder if you would indulge us. There are other comments to be made, and before we get to that formal motion.
Absolutely.
We can come back to that.
Absolutely.
And if you lower your hands, I'll be ever so grateful. Councillor McLaughlin, please.
Through the chair. I was very interested in what Darren had to say with his question about the capacity, the future capacity. And I don't really believe that a town of 10,000 people is willing to subsidize the infrastructure for this lift station for what, 30,000 people overall, I guess, for the town is projected if you're going to triple everything. And I think the scope of this project should be quite radically reduced within a decent budget. And we shouldn't be expecting business as usual where we're building infrastructure for development we may have projected 30 years ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rowe.
Well, I would disagree. I think we need to be building for the future. If we're going to spend any money, we need to be looking at what the potential is. So I think we need to be thinking about what the zoning allows and make sure that we have capacity for that. My question, I am also on team do it now, or it's going to have a 5 in front of it. And my question though is, are we confident that there is enough budget to timeline within the project as it's laid out to deal with any archaeological issues?
Very good. There's.
Thank you for the question through the mayor. Yes, we've already started the archaeology process. We've already obtained most of the permit that we can. Now that we have a conceptual design through the tender process, we've started doing some additional testing. But we are well underway and we have a good amount of budget for it. And we also have a good amount of contingency for it. So I feel very confident that we are covered. Of course, there's always things that come up, but we have planned for that and worked really closely with our archaeology consultant and First Nations.
Just to follow up and to finish this, the bid or the RFP with the negotiations you've done is about 3.3 plus BST. What's the gap between that and 4 million approximately? So everybody's clear.
Yeah. Great question. Like I noted in the original slide, we have some archaeology budget in there. We have the owner's representative. So that's our engineer that also oversees this project for the third party to make sure we're in compliance. We have some surveying. We did some archaeology work. We did some geotechnical work. And we did a bit of monitoring. So all of that is included in that.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Councillor Shepherd weighs in.
If I could direct it to the chair, I wonder if staff would feel comfortable at the moment discussing if any other alternatives did come up. I'm certain that they're aware that how the cost escalated tremendously, and I'm sure they did look at alternatives. So I wonder if they would feel comfortable at this meeting mentioning if there were alternatives. Thank you.
Sorry, if there were, you mean
If there were alternatives to going ahead with the contract as it's presented.
Okay. So that's a historical question. Yeah. Right. Think that right. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you for the question through your worship. I think it should be appreciated that through the process, the contractor did creatively and collaboratively work with our staff to reduce the cost on several items. So one of those was trying to reuse the existing well, leverage that, trying to use some of the existing infrastructure. And I thought they did that in good faith and they worked really hard to get their price down. So they want to be a partner with the District of Sechelton seeing this project go forward. Furthermore, in terms of alternative locations, we did look at a location on the highway, but there wasn't the right footprint to build that on that location. So it wasn't viable. So we didn't leave any stone unturned in terms of this project and trying to get the costs down and keep it within a realm of reason. And I mean, I've been doing tendering for a long time, probably 30 years, and I haven't seen an instance where, you know, you waited a year and the project cost has actually come down. If anything, they've always gone up. So, you know, I think we should recognize the the collaborative work that was done between the contractor and staff to try and manage this cost in light of a challenging escalatory environment that's out there in the construction industry right now. So I hope that answered the question. Thank you.
Counselor Shepherd.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't think I picked up that you did look at alternative locations and geography being what it is, those have to be limited. They have to be down low. According to the animated drawing we saw in the presentation earlier. Counselor Tough.
Thank you. In looking on page 91 of the agenda package, the second and third paragraphs down. In February 2020, granted this was pre-COVID, Class B cost estimate was $870,000. And the grant application was approved in September of 2022. So that's 2.5 years to hear back on a grant, which is quite unfortunate, I will say. I'm wondering if there was any conversation held with the province about topping up that grant, given that, you know, everybody's experienced the cost increases over the 2.5 years they were waiting to hear back on these projects. But yeah, just to see a project go from 870,000 to 3.7 million in 3 years. Like it's dumbfounding.
That's a good word, yeah. Mr. Dillon.
Thank you for the question. Again, through the mayor. So whenever we have a situation like this, we receive a grant, the bids come in and, you know, everything's out of whack. Our first question is to the province is, do you have more money? And that is literally our first starting point. And as you'll see with the next presentation on the active transportation project is the anecdotally through representatives we've spoken through at the province, the grant, the money that was put out to municipalities recently was part of the factor behind that is these cost escalations. They report seeing these across the province, and they're not unique to Sechelt. We do have about a 25% Sunshine Coast factor, if you will, that escalates our costs here, but it's a province-wide thing. And yeah, we always ask for more money, and we also ask for stacking provisions as well, because some of these have stacking provisions. And what we've been told from the province is if they're two provincial grants, you can't stack. But if it's a federal one, you can't stack on some of these provincial grants. So we clarify that with the provincial representatives. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Dillon. Maybe I'll jump in because I think, first of all, the issue of what are we serving, you know, in terms of the population we're serving. I certainly never want to have this back in 10 years saying, gosh, I wish we built it a little bit bigger. So I have no problem with this sizing, even if we never use the full capacity. The second thing I support Councillor Tough, although I'd referenced just before COVID, it was a certain price, and I think things pretty well shut down for a year in terms of the ability to proceed with projects like this. So that's an important thing, because when I get to a discussion of where we're going to pay for this, I think some of the escalation is due to COVID. While I'm on a roll, look who's here. Bandera's joined us. Just while I'm on this, I'd like to see us not use the Growing Communities Fund. I think I support the option one with some nuances that I've had the benefit of chatting with Mr. Douglas about. I also would like to see us in fact borrow more than 1.1. And I wanted to clarify one point. It's only sewer users that are paying these costs. So it is not accurate to say the whole community is paying for these costs. You know, all of these amounts will be paid through user fees, parcel taxes, if indeed we borrow the money. And new developments, yes. Yep. So maybe I'll stop there. And did Mr. Bandera had his hand up, but did he still there or?
Your worship, I think he's getting ready for the next presentation.
Oh, okay. I saw his hand up, but all right, that's fine. We'll keep this. Yes. Counselor Inkster, please.
We have a motion in front of us with the, I'm asking, no, I know it's not, the motion's not there, but a motion is here. That we should maybe present so that we can talk about the financing.
Okay, so
Yes.
so there, well,
I meant the motion wasn't on the table. I meant it's in front of us.
right. Yeah, I stand corrected. Okay, well, if you would like that. I'd certainly be, well, I'll propose a motion as written in number 1 under recommendations, but to test council's will, if you wish, that we use no more than 1.4 million of development cost charges, not 1.87. And that we add that amount to a loan. So that would be a loan of about 1.6 million. And let me add, and again, I've had the benefit of chatting with Director Douglas about this. I'd remind council that in 2 years, the debt that we used or we took out to borrow, or we borrowed to build the Water Resource Center will be fully paid. So if we were to borrow this money, we have in our current structure for the sewer an ability to pay money over the next 4 or 5 years to repay this. On a basis that would have to be calculated. So that's where I would be going. If it was to be a motion. Councillor Shepherd.
Sorry, I just wonder if we could have more discussion of
course.
debt financing versus
Yes.
using the community fund and why we see an option here for it. But what's the strength of one option over the other?
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Top will dovetail into that.
Just before staff answer that question, because I'm also looking at, in option 1, it talks about 1.1 in short-term borrowing from MFA. And we know that short-term borrowing is 5 years or less, does not require elector approval. I'm wondering what the implication would be to do, say, a 10-year borrow, knowing that we need to do an AAP, but that this lift station is supposed to last for 30 years. So, if we did a 10-year borrow on it, what would that look like?
So let's start with the first part of that question, the elements of borrowing. And MFA ability to repay. I think those, Councillor Shepherd, am I paraphrasing your questions? Yeah.
Yeah, so going through AEP, these aren't negatives, these are just information, okay? So going through AEP would delay the project and likely would have to be retendered. We have a tender in that's being held for 60 days, 90 days, 60 days. 60 days. So to go through AEP, then we would have to retender at once the AAP was successful. The level of borrowing may force the MFA may, ask us to go to AAP if the number goes up. And maybe I should say it may not be an AAP, it's whatever council decides. So it would either be a vote or
referendum
AAP. But it would be we would have to go through an approval process to borrow for 10 years. Yeah, if this number gets, too high, MFA may just say, listen, we'd rather you do an approval of some sort. And so, I think that's the risk of increasing the value of what we're going to borrow. We borrow $1.1 million over 5 years, that the amount that's charged to the that has to be paid back, you can see is $275. If we go up to $1.6 million,
about 400.
That's it's probably $350,000 versus $275 annually. And the other,
No, it's that
Sorry, just to follow on,
Mm.
it's not quite answering my question. Is our finance department recommending one direction or another? Have we modeled the impact of interest costs, the 275 or 350 over the next few years? I'm still a little bit unclear
no,
about it.
This
Thanks.
is very appropriate.
So staff has provided a recommendation that I would say it feels most comfortable about. We also offered up an option, which would be to borrow instead of using the Growing Communities Fund. The modeling really comes from the fact that we know that in a year and a half's time, the WRC debt is coming off. So there will be capacity to borrow. We're taking off, let's say, $780,000 from annual debt payments, going down to 250 or 320 or 350. 370, 275 or 350
In round numbers, yeah. That's the important thing. Right now, those annual or the payments each year in the order of 780.
somewhere in that range. Yes.
So those are paid off in 2 years. So nothing else changes. We have that amount to make payments against other loans.
Thank you. I'm supportive, well, I'm not supportive of the price tag. I think that's clear. I would prefer to see us go through borrowing for more of it than to see between this project and the next one on our agenda, wipe out half of that Growing Communities Fund that we're providing. The one thing that I do want to emphasize or maybe seek some clarity on, if I'm off base, is that, we have the WRC debt falling off in the next couple of years, but in the next, probably before this project is paid off, we're going to have to do something about our outfall. And with these kind of cost escalations, that's probably a $40 million project by now. So it's alarming, and I don't want to see us burden our sewer users with debt now when we know it's going to be a big ticket project coming down the pipe. Thanks.
Thank you. I think if we have to do an outfall project, yes, it's a whole different, whatever can of worms or probably a good different comment. But if it was 20, 30, 40 million, we definitely do referendums and other fundings and stuff. Councillor, if I might, just Councillor McLaughlin, just to be clear, the other part in me saying reducing the contribution from DCCs is to pick up on your point that if we take the 1.8 out of the DCCs, you've seen in the report that it takes it down to essentially zero. I mean, a couple of $100,000. And it's much harder to build up DCCs than it is to pay off a loan. Oh, that's the other part.
Yeah, the amount in the report says it will reduce it down to $402,000.
Okay, I stand corrected. Councillor McLaughlin, thank you.
Yeah, getting back to the idea of not having any alternative sites. Of course, this area is just being battered by sea rise already or storms. And so you're saying there is no other alternative site that we could consider to do a small replacement for this particular facility, but also have a longer term other site that is in a safer, more reliable location. Because I'm not really comfortable putting $4 million into an area that is just at risk constantly and is going to be more so in the future.
Thank you. I think that's a really good point, and I'd ask staff if you can comment because obviously any storm surges, I don't happen to be as concerned about the permanent sea level rise in the next 20 years as I believe you are, Councillor McLaughlin. But the what do we do to defend this facility in the event of storm surges and potentially some sea level rise?
Yes, thank you. That's an excellent question. And through the mayor, sea level rise, storm surge, climate change, adjustments are all considered in the design of this structure. Part of how that's going to be addressed is elevating it up higher than it is right now. So it's going to move up in elevation, still in the same, south of the highway. We still need to pick up the homes that are down below. However, we do have the ability to move it and restructure the wet well a little bit higher to move out of the sea level rise zone and also protect against the storm surge and wave action. And that's something, a piece that will be calculated as part of the design process. Secondly, it'll be contained inside of building. And that was a recommendation, a long-term recommendation for any facility that's exposed to these kind of ocean environments. And thirdly, to address the question of can we move it to a different location entirely? Really no. The way that entire catchment is structured is to drain to that one point. To construct a facility that's only capable of pumping what's existing now, as opposed to constructing it for the 30-year build out, the savings would be very minimal. You still need the building, you still need all of the construction facilities, all of the bypass, the archaeology, the engineering, everything. You might save a little bit in the pump sizing and some smaller components, and that's about it. Really, your best value is to construct this for the long term. And certainly all of those things are being considered.
Thank you, Councillor Inkster.
I think we just have to continuously talk about what we're going to do for mitigation in terms of climate change. This is going to be built for mitigation and adaptation. That's what we need to continue to talk about. In terms of the issue that's before us on the table or about to be on the table, I am also in favor of a financing option for the district. I think it's too early for us to start spending the grant that we just made a bylaw for. So I'm in favor of looking at a financing option. I just wanted to ask a question. As I say, I support that, what the borrowing percentage will be, the interest rate.
Oh, the interest rate.
Yeah.
The calculation was high fours.
So MFA, yeah, currently is about something high fours.
Yeah. Low fives or high fours. Yeah.
Okay, that's a little higher than I thought it would be, but that's what's going on. We're on a declining balance, right? A quickly declining balance, right? So,
Right.
Yeah.
And if it was to be paid off quickly, then the impact of, high fours and high threes or high sixes isn't that big a deal.
Yeah. Well, that's the pill that we'll have to swallow, just with the quickly declining balance by 1/4 a year, right? Yeah.
And that's 101. Yep. Okay, so council, we have three recommendations. Before we get to the motions, I think number 2 is fairly straightforward. Number 3 is one that I personally wanted to ask council to consider asking staff to come back to us on, in terms of should we defer? Because here we are talking about the importance of getting these things done before the costs go up. And yet we're also contemplating deferring. So I'm not suggesting we reject that recommendation. I personally would like to get a little more information on how we might be able to do it sooner. Dylan?
Thank you, your worship. So I guess the question is, do we defer another year and don't do Wakefield lift station? I think one thing that's being,
No, that's
okay.
not what I meant. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
The third one. So maybe take a minute and think, just.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes, defer them.
No,
Because,
my comment is defer the discussion of whether we defer them.
we could, but it's
It could be
quite
2
clear.
weeks, Could be 2 weeks, but
Yeah, I think it's quite clear based on the sanitary sewer modeling and master plan work that has been done to date. That Urban Systems, our consultant, has indicated that those 2 particular projects will not be required likely until at least 2025. So on the engineering basis alone, they could be deferred quite safely. So and given the workload we have with the Wakefield, we figured these would be 2 prime projects to defer to a later year quite safely and would make sense to do so. Thank you.
unless the cost is then 30% higher than we expected. So that's why I'm asking that we take a breather. That to me is not germane to the first two items. So Councillor Inkster.
Yeah, I think you're asking us to vote on the first two and then perhaps make a motion to defer the defer.
You were just waiting to use that line.
I was, and I think it's apt because that's what that's what you're proposing. Correct?
It is.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Councillor Todd?
Thank you. Just given that borrowing was one of the, options, but not part of the main body of recommendation work that was done. And that we're talking about possibly altering the numbers that we borrow, and we've got questions about what sort of rates we're looking at. I'm wondering if we should sort of vote on referring this back to staff to come back at the next council meeting with a little more information on the borrowing option, rather than trying to play with changing numbers on the fly.
I'm aware of the deadline to commit to the contract. And if I was the proponent, I would want to know that council has given direction on how they're going to get paid. I think we could modify, to your point, we could agree on something today on how we're going to pay for it, and we could modify that later. Because it would assume that the contract has staged payments, we're not paying in advance. So that's okay.
Yeah, there's one option that we had was part of our cost savings if we paid a portion of like the generator from our funds instead of the contractor paying for it, so that we got those cost savings. So that's one of our initiatives that we've done. So that would be something we would do right away, especially
But
when the
out of
time.
the 3-point-something million,
Yeah.
we're not paying it all. in
No,
advance.
no, exactly. Just some of those portions is where we've got some cost savings.
Agreed. But the
Yeah.
actual payment of the contract
Correct.
will proceed over the
Yeah.
next 8 months or so.
Correct.
Boys?
I just want to make one comment about option 3 there. The second project there was a grant project. And we just had word that we didn't get the grant, so that project will push out anyway. So so it's really the first of those two projects that are in the recommendations 3.
Okay, let's hope we can talk about 3. Let's try and figure out where we are with 1 and 2. Councillor Inkster?
I think the Councillor Toff was just asking if 2 weeks would, with some more information, would cause problems with the information and the contractual discussion that has previously occurred.
Okay.
And
Will it cause problems?
Yeah.
No, well, yes, I think because we have 60 days and we got it on February 23rd. We're real tight. It's 90. We've got.
Your worship, I would agree. It would get close to that date, and given the cost escalation, I would hate to see the contractor come back and say another item has gone up in price. So I think it's best, our best professional advice on this is to move forward and get this tendered and locked up as soon as we can. Thank you.
Okay, so let me see. I'll test the meeting. I'll make a motion then. That is item 1 as we're reading it, except that we change 1.878 from DCCs to 1.4. The fund for 400,000 from the sewer capital reserve, 670 from the infrastructure grant, and 1.578, which I believe is the balance, as a loan for a term of not more than 5 years.
I'll second that after read back, please. I mean, I
Sure,
know it's
yeah.
a tough one, but I
Yeah.
need to hear.
No,
it.
no, no, of course.
And then I'll second it most likely. Thanks.
I can try and read it back. Are you ready?
Please correct me if I got any parts wrong, but that council approve additional funding for the Wakefield Sanitary Lift Station project in the amount of $2,848,990 for a total project cost of $4,048,990. Funding to come from the following: $1,478,543 from development cost charges for
Sorry, stop. It's 1.4 million.
4
zeros.
million. Thank you. $1.4 million from development cost charges for sewer, 400,000 for sewer capital reserve, 670,447 from Investing in Canada Infrastructure Grant, and $1,578,543 for short-term borrowing from a municipal finance authority. The
For a-
municipal.
For a term
finance
of not more than 5 years.
For a term of not more than 5 years.
Thank you. So we have a motion moved and seconded. Any further discussion? You, sorry, Counselor Bell, I haven't checked in with you. You're hearing us all okay?
Yes, I am. And with the new information that's come to the table, I'm in support of this motion.
Okay, thank you. Counselor McLaughlin, please.
I would just like to, again, raise some opposition to this approach that in 2020, we had a budget of 870,000. Now it's over 4 million. I find that just confounding and totally not acceptable. Also, we were not informed as we discussed this lift station in a tour and meetings here that the capacity would be 3 times what it currently is, which is, to me, is just
That's fine.
not acceptable at all.
You've
We
said
haven't
that.
done DCC updates. We need that if DCCs are supposed to be paying for new development, so it doesn't appear really that they are. And then also unofficial community plan. Maybe we need to look at having density
Councillor
in
McLaughlin,
areas
we-
other
we-
than
We need a lift station now
unsubdivided. Yes, we could have a
So
revised scope,
let's-
which
let's
is something
stay
you often do
focused
when you have a tender
on the
that's
lift
over.
station.
You reduce the scope, and that's what I'm asking,
Counselor Tough,
a drastic reduction in scope. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to be voting against this motion. I recognize the funding is a better source than the Growing Communities Fund, but I can't accept the $4 million price tag. One thing though that I do want to point out, in sort of contrast to Councillor McLaughlin's comment, is that with the original budget only having $220,000 coming from DCCs, future growth is paying for, a third of the cost of this station. So if we are indeed, increasing the size significantly, and we are doing upgrades for sea level rise and storm surge, and we're making all these other modernization changes to it, that we're able to functionally get development cost charges to pay for a third of it is quite, like, I am quite in support of that, for sure.
thank you. Okay. Anything else? Oh, no, okay. You ready for the question? We'll call the question. All in favor? Oh, 5. I couldn't see your hand. 5, yes, opposed. Councilors Toth and McLaughlin opposed. The motion carries. Council, then, item 2 on the recommendations is, yes? Thank you. So would you like to, anybody would like to make a motion as presented on item 2? I will. Come on. Oh, dear. I will move item 2 on our recommendations to award the contract to Drake Excavating in the amount of 3.262100 plus GST. Seconded, Councillor Inkster Rowe. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Councillor McLaughlin and Toth opposed. The motion carries. So, item 3. Please, Councillor Toth.
Thank you. I'm actually happy with the staff explanations, so I'm going to move recommendation 3 as it is, because I think given that we passed recommendations 1 and 2, it's the only way we're going to be able to pay for it.
No. Yeah, okay, so is there a seconder for that? Okay, thank you. The last part of the comment, it's the only way we're gonna be able to pay for it is, what is it? Can you say that?
I think I've made my comments about the Wakefield lift
Okay,
station
so
cost.
to
quite
pay
well.
for, to pay,
Thank you.
because you feel we need to defer this. To pay for it. Okay. Just wrote that. Okay, any other discussion? All the question, all in favor? Thank you, carried. I beg your pardon, thank you. Councilor McLaughlin. You're opposed, would you like to say why you're opposed to that?
Well, be very important, but because we're spending so much on something that is many times over the initial cost, that we can't do other things. we need to do.
Right, but this is a motion to not do something.
That's right. Maybe we should be doing it. I don't know, but we can't.
Okay.
Like you said.
Oh, gosh, Sarah? No, it's dead. Just a point that I'm happy to go with recommendation 3. Staff have already recommended it. They've already stated that engineering says it can be put off till 2025.
Point of order, we've already voted, right?
Yes, we have voted and I was just seeking clarification of what, if you were aware that you were voting to against deferring something, so, okay, new business? Or, yeah.
Thank you. Given that we've changed the borrowing numbers in here from the staff report, I would like to make a recommendation that staff just report back with information on the cost of the short-term borrowing to a future committee
I
meeting.
think I can take it as a given. Okay. Great. No, good. No. Okay, I think, does that do it, ladies? Mr. Dillon, great, we'll move to item 9.5. Which starts on page 97. And we have Mr. Bandera, I believe, would be presenting or can we promote this?
Actually, your
Oh.
worship, I'll be presenting and
Okay.
I'll be sharing my presentation from my computer.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So I'm presenting agenda item 9.5, which is about the active transportation network project in West Sechelt and West Porpoise Bay. So we had applied for this grant opportunity in typical provincial fashion. They announced it in early December and it was due in January, just after Christmas break. So staff put together the grant submission and we were successful. And so this project's being broken up into segments. So segment 1 of the project includes a section from Highway 101 to Norwest Bay Road. And then the other portion is from Norwest Bay Road to Reeves Road. And then segment 2 continues from there up Reeves Road, Mason Road, along Croston Trail, and then from Croston Trail down Ripple Way, and from Ripple Way to the Kinnickinnick School. So it's meant to create that connectivity between the 2 elementary schools and up Mason Road, which is something that a lot of active transportation users have cited as something that they wanted. So just illustrating this in terms of the mapping. So segment 1 would be the red and blue lines, and segment 2 would be the green, purple, and orange lines.
Great. Oh, there's more.
Yeah, it's about 8 slides. So I just wanted to go through the rationale of this project. So it's consistent with the current OCP active transportation goals, connects to two elementary schools. And these were high value destinations that were identified, playgrounds, the Kinnicknick Park Golf Course and others. And in terms of moving the District of Seychelles active transportation network forward, we're identified as by the Canadian Active Living Environments Database in 2019 as having the least favorable one out of 4 rating for active transportation. And you can see that in some of the data. We have only 8.1% walking, 1.3% by bicycling and other forms of active transportation. And the low rates were attributed to a lack of infrastructure, which we have to recognize has been addressed in recent years with what's happened on Trail and on Wharf Avenue with those sidewalks. So we are headed in the right direction. So I would argue that we're much better now than we were in 2019. So at this, we went to 75% design, got that completed. And at that point, we were seeing the cost escalations and we realized that we were likely to go over budget, but so we were proactively working with the province to see if we can make design alterations to keep the costs down. So staff worked really hard with the design consultant to try and get these costs down. And so certain items like concrete barriers were removed in favor of painted barriers and things like that. So we tried to be creative. And we discussed it with provincial representatives and they, were okay with these design alterations. Tender around February, and we did that with the normal MMCD contract forms and posted on bids and tenders. And we got the lowest bid from Macon. I believe it, if that's correct. And so we issued a non-binding letter of intent to award to lowest compliant bidder. And so the project came in over what we had available for funding. So the purpose of this report is to lay out some recommendations to see the project move forward. We did this in a way, we provided alternative options in case we want to stage this in a way to not eat into that growing communities fund as much. So there are cost savings with going ahead with segment 1 and 2 in sequence. And so our recommendation from staff is to fund the shortfall with a mixture of 110,000 from the local government climate action program reserve and 900,000 from the growing communities fund, but and that we not proceed forward with a small segment that was in East Porpoise Bay. And the idea of that segment was it would turn into eventually East Porpoise Bay Promenade, but I think there's a lot more work and engagement required. So staff were okay excluding this from the overall project, and in talking with the province, they also are okay with that, and they will reimburse us for the design we've done to date. So that's a good thing. And so now we always like to provide alternatives to council to explore. So this is an alternative, wording for a resolution where we would try and spread this out over 2 years. And so this provides an opportunity for segment 2 to be addressed through capital reserves in as part of the 2024 budget, or potentially there'll be another active transportation grant come in the meantime. There always seem to be new ones coming from the province, so we can apply for those. But they're likely, we've tacked on a little bit of cost escalation for delaying it in that way because everything goes up in price. So, and then obviously we have the other option of not going ahead, which in the report, there's risks involved with that in terms of having to have clawback back.
Yep.
So that's the presentation and open up for questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Dillon. Okay, Counselor Inkster.
Thank you.
you're First.
I just right away off the hop for a question for Mr. Dillon. Do you think you can get this project done or most of it done for the amount of money that was in place before you come to us for an additional $1 million?
Do I think we can get all of it done with what
Or,
we? what
or
we have in
most of
place?
it done for, if I was to say to you, if I had that power to say to you, get it done for $3 million.
Get what done?
The active transportation plan.
No, but this is segment one and two.
Yeah. I know.
What are you asking?
Whatever segment was listed under the grant amount that reached about $3 million in which you're asking us to add an additional amount to it.
Okay, so I'm trying to clarify the question through your worship is the question, can we build segment 1, 2, and 3 within $3.2 million that we had?
Yeah.
The
Can you
answer,
make it work?
okay, the answer to that would be no.
You've included segment 3, so let's.
Yeah.
I think we could, you want to, okay, Counselor Toth has a motion for item 3. That we direct staff not to proceed with segment 3. And is there a second? Yeah, is there a seconder? Okay. Any discussion on removing segment 3? You okay, Counselor Bell, please? Some reason we can't hear you now. You're not muted. Your headset's on. Yep. No, okay, we'll come back to, try your audio settings on the lower left. Yes, you could also, if it's, you could type something in the Q&A at the center bottom of the screen. We'll get it that way for the moment. So, yes, but we're talking about this motion. Are you raising a concern about the motion, Counselor Bell? That's the problem. Type something. This is to defer or to not proceed with segment 3, which is the East Purpose-based section. Do you want to telephone one of us? Phone answer, whose phone rings? Don't call Counselor Rowe. Yes, thank you.
I'm just wondering if the cost of this program could be part of a DCC.
Through your worship, no, it's not a DCC identified project, so we can't include it in the DCC program.
Could it be identified as a DCC project moving forward?
Could it be?
Yeah.
No, because it's serving mostly an existing area that's already built. So it can't be included.
Okay, I'd like to follow up on that. If it was a road for our education now, not because I'm proposing a road, but the DCCs be used to build a road?
It depends if the road is serving a new area,
Yeah.
it could be used for that purpose.
Okay. That's just-
So yeah,
just for
the
education.
context matters in that case.
Yes, yeah.
I guess it depends on how you define area.
Yes.
I mean,
agree.
because, we have a lot of rural areas with some pockets of development. So I think actually it would be best if it could be included in DCCs if possible.
Okay, yep, okay, we have Counselor Bell, Modern Technology speaking on corporate officer.
I say it again, Donna.
Yep, we can hear you now.
Okay, yeah, it's, thank you. It's just a clarification question in regards to segment 3. What is the cost of that segment alone?
Thank you, yeah, Mr. Dillon, do you have
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to defer to our manager of engineering projects on that particular question. Thank you.
Mr. Bandera,
Thank
please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, it does.
Thank you, Director Glenn, and through the chair. We haven't separated the item segment number 3 from the whole project. Initially, we did segment 1, 2, and 3. That's came up nearly over 6 million. So then we reduced the scope of work, and we have not taken account to consider the segment number 3 from the class B estimate. So we don't have that class B estimate for the segment 3.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Okay, thank you. We need to watch the feedback. Anything else, Councillor Bell, for the moment? Okay, maybe stay on the turn off your microphone. And we'll just I'd like us to stay focused on the motion, which is relating to segment 3. So, Councillor McLaughlin, is this about
Well, I mean,
segment 3?
they connect each other, right?
No,
So the schools,
no, this
Doesn't-
segment 3
is,
is in East Purpose Bay. Right, segment 3 is in East Purpose Bay from Purpose Bay Provincial Park to Burnett Road.
oh,
So it's
okay,
quite
yes,
physically
now I
separate.
think about it.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if I'm seeing and hearing nothing else, I'll call the question on this motion. All in favor? Items, second, recommendation 3 on, okay, all in favor of this motion? Carried. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Councilor Bell. Okay, let's go back to the meat of the issue. Any other questions? We're talking about the route in West Sechelt, essentially from Kinnikinnick School. And I'm saying this intentionally. Well, I'll give you the, whatever you want to call it, my idea. And that is, I would like to see us do segment 2. And as much of segment 1 working from the east, if you will, to down Mason Road until we run out of money. Point of that is we have Norwest Bay Road in West Sechelt has bike paths and sidewalks. I was driving there today, and there's even some bike paths down Mason Road below, which were built when the school was modified, when the West Sechelt was modified. I think the biggest bang for our buck is to develop the connectivity, which in Mr. Dillon's presentation talked about the importance of connecting Kinnikinnick Elementary with West Sechelt Elementary, and that involves segment 2. So that's my idea, my contribution. I don't see a real benefit of spending money on segment 1 on the steep hill of Mason Road. So that's my contribution to the discussion for the moment. Mr. Dillon, you had your microphone on.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I think it's important to note that we do have a provincial and federal partner in this funding program. And so if we were to make an alteration to the program in the manner suggested, we should be running that past our federal and provincial partners to see if they would be okay with that change. They've already been okay with several design modifications, as well as removing segment 3. And they actually said we could recover the cost of design for segment 3. So we've gone back to the table proactively with them at least 3 times. And so I think if we were to bring that to the table, we would definitely need to have a discussion with them. Thank you.
Understood. I agree. Councillor McLaughlin.
Yes, thank you through the chair. I've been a facilities planner for schools and also which inspired me to do Greenways planning as well for in BC through the Provincial Capital Commission with 13 different municipalities. So I'm just kind of curious why you think one school would want, as a priority of a node, you want nodes for connections, right? Why would you want one school to be connected to another? You think, I don't really believe that elementary age children are going to ride their bikes in any numbers from one school to the next, frankly.
Thank you through the chair again. This is, this connectivity is something that's been identified from the community for a while. It's in the OCP plan. It's not, something that staff came up with. It's something that's been in all the planning documents and outreach. We conducted stakeholder engagement with the school district as well as, TRAC, who, is, active, transportation users in the community. And there was a lot of support for this routing. So it's not just, connecting to elementary. It's part of a larger plan that's been out there for quite some time. Thank you.
Yes, just checking. Too many screens. Councillor Shepherd, please.
I have to say that I would speak I'm in favor of your idea of limiting the scope, obviously going back to our partners, the funding partners, and hoping that they're sympathetic to the fact that it's no one's fault. Its costs have escalated tremendously over this period of time. And that's the reason that we're going back to them to try and modify the scope of work and hope to do segments of this exact plan later in time when we have the funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Inkster and then Councillor Rowe.
If we look at West Seashelt and the rest of the community, the part that's missing, the connectivity that's missing that will move our community in active transportation out of vehicles onto bikes, bicycles and walking is the area that you've identified. That's the piece that's missing in our community. The other areas which are in lower West Seashelt have been built up through home building and roads and bike lanes through the construction that's occurred there to put in the lower section connectivity. So we should be looking at the two and then the one later, because we already have some fairly good road and shoulder infrastructure in place.
Okay, thank
So
you.
I'm supporting us continuing to have that conversation with the funders based on the fact that we have cost issues and spending issues. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Councillor McLaughlin, your microphone's still on. Oh, I beg your pardon, Councillor Rowe.
Sorry, through you to staff, I know I read in here about a signal crosswalk at Mason and Norwest, but now I can't lay my eyes on it. Is that part of the,
Oh, signal, okay. Red light.
did I, or was I dreaming?
I can defer
You better
to
answer
the,
that. Better talk to
oh,
me and
through-
don't answer her.
okay,
directly.
sorry. Yes,
Are you
through
sleeping?
your worship. So I think the signalization is rapid rectangular flashing beacons. And the manager of engineering projects would have more to say
Okay.
on that. So, Sanat?
Mr. Banana.
Mr. Banana.
Oh
Mr.
my
Bandera.
Thank you, Worship. So this is two scenarios. Originally, we take a cash in lieu from the school district at the intersection Novus Bay and Mason Road should be elevated crosswalk. So then later, our engineer during the design process, because it's a four-way stop and it is not advantage having a elevated crosswalk that point. So instead, they suggested at the Novan intersection, Novan and the Mason Road, there's a lot of people, kids coming from Novan to cross in there. So instead of that one, elevated crosswalk with the RRFB, that is a rectangular rapid beacon push button thing to install there. So that's, we changed the design, the crosswalk at Novan Road.
At Norvan, okay.
Yeah.
So that's a block and a half or 2 blocks down from Norwest Bay on.
I know it
Mason.
well.
Only one block away.
1 block, okay, stand corrected.
So that's part of phase one then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, okay, thank you. Yes, Mr. Bandera.
One more clarification. I think I raised my hand previously.
Yeah.
This regarding that, how would we determine that this neighborhood concept? So we considered the 4 neighborhood within the Seychelles, West Seychelles, West Purpose Bay, and Tuanak area, East Purpose Bay, and other one is that towards Highway 101, Selma Park area. So the Selma Park area we have taken out because of this is a highway connecting, and there's no way to put a bike lane over there. And then we considered other three, but only connecting three neighborhoods actually to downtown: West Chichel, West Purpose Bay, and downtown. The downtown, the missing piece now we are already tendered. That is a bike BC grant. So this is the opportunity we have to connect the round trip between all this neighborhood. So I want to just to clarify what the rationale why we did that one.
Okay, thank you.
Through your worship, I think, I just want to show how the mechanics of how going with segment 2 first and then completing segment 1 after would look contractually. So, we would have to put out a new tender for segment 2 and contract that work. And then likely in the interim, the segment 1 tender would elapse. Usually tenders, when you release them, have start and end points. It's not a cost plus tender, so we'd have to come up with some kind of reasonable or a second tender endpoint of where we wanted to stop those works. We would tender that out again. So it would require us revisiting some of the stuff that we've already put out there and designing. And there should also be some grant deadlines that we should keep in mind here, is that we're required under the grant agreement to begin construction by September 30th of this year and have it all completed by December 31st in 2024.
Okay, thank you. On that, I think that we have it'll be a lot cheaper to build segment 2 than it will the hill on Mason Road. Not an engineer or contractor, but looking at that, the work on the hill and the need for drainage and so on, drainage system. So I still am in favor of it. I think a call to the contractor to say, hey, would you like to do stuff over here, and essentially swap the definitions of 1 and 2. So he's got $2.9 million and build as much, tell us how much you can build from Ripple, Kinnikinnick around.
Again, through your worship, I think we've tendered a project with a set scope. There were, I believe, 4 other bidders on it. If we were to change the terms of the contract in that manner, we would have to run that by legal first to see if that follows procurement best practices, because it's changing the scope after the fact. And the argument you may hear from other contractors is that they didn't get an opportunity to bid on that reduced scope of work. Thank you.
Yep, great. Okay, thank you. So council, how would you like to proceed? Continuing to take the lead, I will test. I suppose I want to say, I think that we need to do whatever to make sure we follow due process. But I can't support the cost of segment 1 up Mason Road. And I like the idea of connecting the Kinnikinnick Park to the Mason Road area. So that's the driver behind this. Whether or not it's cheaper is obviously speculation on my part. So that respect, to test the will of council, I will on the fly move a motion that we let me back off. And you want a motion of any sort from us at this point, or would you like us to table this for the next meeting, during which time you could get legal advice? And perhaps with that check. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out. Thank you. Donna's waving your hand. So just so I'd like to just staff you what works best.
Thank you. Yes, so your worship, we have the recommended motion. There's the alternative to that motion. And that's what we've brought forward to council today. Thank you.
Right. Okay, well. Okay, now we have Counselor Bell had her hand up. And Mr. Bandera has his digital hand up. So we'll hear from Counselor Bell first.
Oh, gee,
We've got you.
can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. So, heck's going on? Sorry, I'm hearing. There, now can you hear me?
Yes. Please proceed,
Boy, it is
Counselor Bell.
a challenge doing this through
Yep.
sometimes.
Yeah.
My question is probably in support of what you're asking for, John, in terms of I would like the staff to come back with more information on segment 1 in terms of implications, whether it's financial or other implications if we don't proceed with that.
Okay, thank you.
It could be funding, whatever those implications are. I know that there were some things that were mentioned in terms of concerns.
Okay, no, I think
about,
we got your
feedback,
point. Yeah.
Completion of not completing projects, etc. So I just wanted implications might exist if we do not proceed with segment 1
Okay. And my,
from the staff.
yeah, okay, yes. Okay, we'll hold that for a second. And Mr. Bandera, did you have something to offer?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. In addition to Director Dylan's explanation about the contract, this contract is 90 days price guaranteed according to our contract, and from the tender closing date, and that 90 days expired May 25th. So so a few things. Other one is that reduce the scope work. We can reduce this MMCD contract. We can go maximum up to 10% of the contract value, the reduction. So that if we reduce the length, as you we mentioned about that, from the Highway 101 towards Novas Bay Road. So the meeting with the province, they categorically they mention us to complete segment 1 and segment 2. So now they are proceeding that information with the federal. So they asked me to should they proceed with that before the council decisions. Then I said yes, because we need to get this done. So now they are working with that segment 1 and segment 2 to complete that. And if you want to reduce the length from the Mason Road, so we have to go back to the the province and get that some information from them.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That's understood. And I accept that. I think we could sell the province on it, but my speculation. So, Councilor, yeah.
I know where we're going. I think we're looking at second segment. If we need to fashion a motion to that effect.
Well, and
You know.
we have a motion coming.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, great. Can I make a motion to get a microphone like Mr. Bandera first or?
Councilor Rowe, you had a motion?
I'm actually in support of the recommendations as laid out here, so. I'm gonna move recommendation 1 and 2.
Okay, there's a seconder. Discussion? You got 1 and 2. That gets to another thing, which is to do. What I just heard is I think that the province is expecting us to do both segments 1 and 2. So, we're getting ourselves potentially in a spot of saying we're committing to a contract for segment 1, but we haven't figured out for sure how we're going to pay for segment 2. So I really am struggling with that. The second part is I'm not in favor of using the Growing Communities Fund until we have a more fulsome discussion as council of what to do with the 3.7 million. So I can't support the motion.
Thank you. I can totally appreciate the not wanting to spend the funds out of the Growing Communities Fund until we have a better idea on how we want to spend it. And, given how we spoke about cost overruns on the last one, maybe some people find it surprising supporting cost overruns here. However, there is a much larger amount of grant funding on the table with this particular project. The scale of the overruns are not actually as bad as they are for the lift station. And I mean, when we talk about growing communities, connecting our growing communities, I think is a perfectly eligible project when we're talking about this. So I am in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you, and will this get us segment 2 built?
To clarify, through your worship, recommendation that's on the table, number 1, would that build segment 2? Yes. And we recosted segment 2 in light of these escalated unit rates that came in and added some factor to that to make sure that we can do it.
So for the 620,000 that you've referenced, that's the best estimate at this point for segment 2.
It's a safe estimate. It's the best estimate based on the numbers we received and then some. Thank you.
That's really important to me. If we can get the connector between Kinnikinnick and Mason, essentially segment 2, that to me is far and away the most important part. Councillor, go ahead.
Yeah, yes, through the chair, I am in favor of this. I think it has a lot of potential as well for healthy communities, getting more people out walking, promoting healthy tourism. We can build on it as well as we go. So I guess we might as well just take that funding while we have it. Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, so why are you not back with a motion saying we're going to do segments 1 and 2 and the cost is going to be $600,000 more than what we? I'm missing something at this late hour of the day. You're saying we can do it. Should we not be looking at that?
Okay, through your worship. So I just want to clarify this recommendation then. So that council approved additional funding for segment 1 and 2 active transportation expansion project in the amount of $1,010,000 with funding to come from 2 sources,
Mm-hmm.
110,000.
We can read
And
that.
yeah, so the 620,000 part of that in the 900,000, that's for segment 2. So that amount would pay for both this additional funding to go with both segments. So if you were to approve the recommendation that's there, it would be the funding we need to build both segment 1 and segment 2 in their entirety.
Why did we not seek a quote to do that? Or RFP to do that?
So again, through your worship, I think the initial thinking is because we knew costs were going up, we wanted to tender segment 1 first, because that's 65% of the project, and see how that came in. We already knew going into it that definitely if we were to tender segment 1 and 2, it would definitely come over available funding. What we were surprised with after the tenders came in is that actually segment 1 alone exceeded our total available funding.
Not quite the answer to the question. Could have been like. Okay. Leave it there. We say that I fear we're building something that will get us up Mason Road and we won't be able to afford to, when we go to contract for segment 2, we'll have to be back with more money. And that to me is the jewel in the crown.
Again, through your worship, I think the other difference with segment 2, and I haven't clarified that, and is that because it's a lot of it's a gravel portion work, is that we're hoping to use small contractors to save money. So when I said on Wakefield that when we look at these cost escalations, we leave no stone unturned, that was part of this too, is what work can be done by smaller contractors, what work can be done with our own public works crew. So to keep segment 2 down, we looked at all those options. So that's why it wasn't included in the tenders to give us some options to look at maybe using small contractors for the rest of the work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bandera, on this point?
Yes, through
Briefly,
the chair.
please. Yeah.
Yes, as Director Glenn mentioned about that, and the district taken over the inspection from the consultant. So we save $120,000 toward this project. And the segment 2, this is gravel section. So the province told us the district eligible for machine and material from the district cost, not the labor, not our man hours. So then we thought it to combine with the local contractors and our people can complete that gravel section with the 690,000 or something. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, well, that's fine. So there's many options to do the segment 2, and you're comfortable that we can do it within that budget. I think the proposal should have been that. That would have saved a lot of time. Okay. So anything else, council? Okay, I'll call the question. Ready? All in favor? Opposed? Councilors Inkster and myself opposed. Great, thank you. The motion carries, and that was both of the items, right? Yes, the motion was 1 and 2. Okay, so we've dealt with items 9.5. Council, with your indulgence, I will do council reports, but keep them short. And then we'll, with the Ferry Advisory Committee, I know Ms. Mumford has been patiently waiting, so we won't defer that, but I would like to defer 11.1 to that's the next meeting, and we can deal with it. So council reports, Councilor Bell, I don't know, do you want to?
Nope.
Oh.
No,
She's
that's
back.
great. I'm
Okay.
back. No, very quickly, as you say, the main ones was the conference. Again, lots of learning, more networking, and that's all I have to report right now. Thank you.
Very good. Gold star. Councilor Inkster, we'll just go linear, so. Oh. Oh dear, for the record, Councilor Inkster is pretending he's funny. Okay, thank you. We'll go to Councilor McLaughlin. Thank you for that, Councilor Inkster. Yep. No. Your microphone, please. Yeah.
Of pollution control sewage treatment plant. So it's to see the Nanaimo tertiary plant, which is very interesting, big scale. Thinking, wow, like that is a big step for them, but it's sufficient for their 100,000 population. So that was kind of an eye opener for me, because we only know what we have here. And yeah, it was just very interesting. I enjoyed the political process of the resolution. It was one of the funnest part. What all I say, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll hold till next time.
You're looking for a gold star too. Oh, okay. Yep. Councilor Tough.
Pages and notes this time. I will save the details till later. Of course, I attended AVICC. The Sunshine Coast Tourism South Coast Advisory Committee met yesterday or the day before. They'll have some information there. They're doing a couple of meetings of just sort of program overviews and deeper dives on specific projects. So I will share that back with council at the next meeting. And then, of course, the SCAF meeting last night. Always good to meet with those folks, and I got a little bit more, but I'll report on it in the SCRD portion.
Yes, Councilor Shepherd.
Yes, the SCAF, other than the AVIC, the SCAF meeting last night, a lot of interesting input from the various community associations. I think the primary message was that they're looking for more feedback from council, especially on the budget process where requests go in and then they're not hearing the result of whether it's yes or no. So I promise to follow up on that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. I'm looking for a gold star, so I would just say it's been a continuing busy period. I want to recognize that our chief administrative officer has been on leave, so we've had rotating ACAOs, acting chief administrative officers, and we'll save the punchline for the end of the meeting. But thank you for stepping up, everybody. And with that, we go to the SCRD report.
Thank you. Evacuation planning workshop at Seaside Center, specifically for an evacuation plan, looking at the Tewanek area. This is the consultant's sort of first presentation. Not a huge turnout, but definitely a passionate turnout from the area and surrounding areas. You know, it was obvious that the consultants didn't have local knowledge. Like, there were some obvious things that they could identify, but they were willing to accept the feedback from the locals that had the knowledge. And there's going to be more in the fall, looking at how to operationalize these plans for the neighborhoods. And this particular one was grant funded to look at Tewanek, but they're looking at using it as a template to sort of go through the neighborhoods and get them all done eventually. New SCRD website relaunched as of today. They tried a couple days ago, but had to revert due to technical challenges. One thing, I've already helped one resident troubleshoot a link that I gave them yesterday that didn't work today with the new website. So that, you know, there's some bugs to work out. April 6th was the presentation of the first water update of the 2023 season. While the snowpack is similar to last year, the amount of water in the snowpack is down from last year, at least based on March 31st. Hopefully these last couple of days of rain contributed to water equivalent, or hopefully even more snow up there. It's about 6 to 7 degrees colder up at the lakes than it is down here. So we'll know more in a couple of weeks. And I think I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, then I think Councillor Inkster, you have a Ferry Advisory Committee report. How did you?
So Ferry Advisory report last council meeting. And I believe that yourself requested more additional information from the document and the presentation that I received. So here's the document now that has come through staff to be put on the council agenda of the description of Ferry Advisory Committee, many of the things that it does, and some of the issues that we deal with, and some of the rules and regulations and acts that are present within the Ferry Corp. So Ms. Mumford is here. I didn't know Diane was coming, but Diane's here to maybe help us answer any questions. I think that we have an FAC meeting Monday evening and a public meeting in June, which we, as we've mentioned, we encourage on the number of these issues, we encourage the public to attend. So if you, through you, if you want to ask Ms. Mumford, who's come here and sat through the meeting, to clarify anything or to mention what June is all about, I'm
Perhaps Ms. Mumford is here to talk about evacuation plans. Sure. Do you want to, anything you want to add in council while we're, well, come on up. Just because of the need for a microphone. Council, this is a good wholesome overview of how BC Ferries is configured. It's been the source of many discussions over many years, but I suppose, is there any high points or current challenges?
That was an overview because it is a new term for the Ferry Advisory Committee members. And so trying to get everybody up to speed is a challenge, and making sure people feel comfortable what's going on. One of the reasons that report was so extensive is because we're in the process of the PT6, which is the performance term 6. And that's going to impact the fare increases that we're looking at for the next 4 years. So our Ferry Advisory Committee and the people in the community need to understand how they're getting to that piece. And there has been a or not a temporary, but their draft fare increase are proposed. And now they are working through that. And there's still an opportunity for community members and the councils and chambers of commerce, et cetera, to comment about how that is going to impact our community, which is significant because Councillor Inkster has provided the data that we have, and some of the data for Route 3 is quite challenging. The amount of on-time performance and the overloads that we face, that sort of thing. So that's why that's in that report. The town hall meeting that Councillor Inkster was referring to is in June, and it is an open meeting for residents to come. Usually it's an information meeting where they'll have BC Ferry staff there that will present some information on sort of display boards and then be able to hopefully answer questions from the community. So that's where that is. And there will be a meeting before that, which the public can also attend, which will be the Ferry Advisory Committee. We have two levels, one that we have just within ourselves, and then we have one every few months, actually 2 to 3 times a year with BC Ferries and the Ferry Advisory Committee, so that we can, and the public can come and listen to that and see what we do for our big salaries.
Well, you've been at it a long time. You're a bear for punishment.
Oh, I am. I'm definitely a glutton, but it's nice to see the community stepping forward. I actually had 25 applications for positions on the Ferry Advisory Committee this year. So it was really challenging, I think, for BC Ferries to pick those final numbers because there were so many very talented and people that really
Passionate.
had a lot of experiences to bring to the table, but you can't have a committee of 25 and hope to get anything accomplished.
Thank you.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
Council, any questions for Councillor Inkster or Ms. Mumford?
Yep.
Donna's waving.
I'm waving again. First of all, thank you, Diana. You are a bearer for punishment, but good for you. I know you stay in there and you get good information back to us. Just curious, a couple of positive things that you're feeling good about right now in terms of what's coming up for us on the Sunshine Coast.
Yes, there is one item that I think will be of benefit to people in the community. It has not been released. It was supposed to be this week, and it has been postponed again until next week. But it is where those residents that are traveling to the city for medical appointments and you have a TAP pass or a TAP form that you're given by your doctor, you will now be able to, or once that program starts, you will be able to get a free reservation if they're available to travel to the city and back, which I think will make it a lot better for community members that don't really want to sit at the ferry in the summer lineups. So I think that's a good part. They've heard us talk about it. There's details they need to figure out because for us, particularly on Route 3, where we don't pay going in, people are going to need to make a reservation going in. And so there's a process for that and having to have a credit card or what you can do instead of.
Never.
Excellent.
No, it's
Right
never
on.
easy.
Right.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Diana,
Donna.
and thanks
Great.
again for the great work.
Thank you.
Okay, anything, Councillor Inkster? Yeah, okay. Yep. You say Diane's fault? Yep. Great, no, thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, council, I think everybody, I did say maybe we'd take capital projects to a later meeting, but is there anything, we've all had a chance to read the report. Is there anything that you wanted to comment on or question? If not, we could entertain a motion. We don't even do receipt, do we? We'll take it as read. Okay. Good, and we can go to a motion, please, to release the closed council meeting resolution, which already been published and written about in the newspaper, so if we vote against release, I'm not sure what happens. Getting late. Motion to release. Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. Off. All in favor of release. Motion carries. Any emergency items, Mr. Acting Chief Administrative Officer?
There are no emergency items. Thank you.
Well done. Motion to adjourn, seconded. All in favor? We are adjourned.